A new month, a new Black Bay. This is the Tudor Black Bay 58 Bronze, or the BBB for short. Let's be honest, it's not very exciting, but what it does do again, and the reason why there is a video being made on this piece, is because it is showing us a possible new direction for the Black Bay 58. And surprisingly, it's using new technologies in a few places, which is worth talking about. Could we see this as a prototype for the Black Bay 58? What is new? We are seeing the Black Bay 58 size with a bronze watch. That is a first. For the first time, and this size, we are seeing an Arabic dial. We are also seeing an entirely new clasp arrangement, which I hope to talk about. So instead of just discussing the watch, which would probably take 2 minutes, I find it more enjoyable looking at the inspirations and where this could go when you look at the specifics, what led to this watch, and what the future modifications could be for the Black Bay 58 line. And it is very exciting when you think of it that way. Like with most of these releases, I am more interested in the future potential of these models, which we will also get into later. First things first, materiality. Like in a video made about a month ago about the ceramic model, this one is doing the same thing. We've gone through the 925 sterling, we've gone through 18 karat gold, ceramic, and now we're reverting back to bronze as a metal. Why is it that bronze was chosen for this? I have a theory. Most of us probably know that this is not the first time they've used bronze with these pieces. The first Black Bay bronze was introduced in 2016 in a 41mm format, and many collectors and enthusiasts wanted this because the material is, let's say, pretty enjoyable for what it is offering. We can discuss the pros and the cons of this material at a later stage. When we think of dive watches, bronze does work in a way. It calls back to the nostalgia of those original brass helmets and suits that divers would use. It still is very much in use today when we look at impellers and other components for ships. There is this nostalgic factor around this material, which I think is very true to Tudor's aesthetic, the way they call back to past watch references, and infusing some of that vintage DNA into their modern lineup. The inspirations for this watch next. The vintage Rolex enthusiasts would probably immediately think of the 1675 root beer without the crown guards, a very early generation of the GMT. That model has an almost exact colorway, which I think this one is trying to resemble. And with that, looking at the Black Bay 58 size and the Arabic numerals on the dial, the Submariner reference 6200, which was also a very early precursor. They've melded these two ideas together to create this piece. What I hope to do at the end of this video is look at a few other suggestions of where this watch could go from here. Because from this, there are many other avenues they could look down. The specifications of this watch, nothing very new. The same MT caliber they've been using in a lot of their new pieces, not Meta certified yet, I don't believe. The dial configuration is not new to the bronze models. In fact, this is how the bronze pieces have always been designated. It's good to see it in a smaller size though, and the size now being the typical Black Bay 58 format of 39mm would fit a lot more wrists. Of course, the biggest change is the full metal bracelet idea. On a bronze watch, don't know how successful that's going to be. But I think it was done in order to debut a completely new technology, being their T-Fit clasp, the Black Bay's first attempt at a micro-adjust deployant system. The Pelagos was the first to debut this system with a ratcheting system that had a bit of a spring-loaded effect on the wrist, which worked very well. This is more true to how we would expect its bigger brother to address this idea. The nicest element of all that I really like is that the clasp is not oversized. It doesn't seem like the clasp has been manipulated at all to cater for this technology. Instead, the technology has been fitted around the size of the traditional clasp. Surprisingly, the reviewers haven't been talking about it very much, at least in the articles that I've been seeing. Dare I say, by the looks of the system, it might be even more competent than the Rolex glide lock feature. We can see that there is a spring set in the middle. Through this computer-generated image, it's difficult to see how the system works, but it looks like when you lift it, there is a bit of a negative pressure. Also, judging by the look of the four corners, there could be roller bearings included. Ceramic, of course, that could make the adjustment very smooth. We can see that there are slots at the back of the clasp, which means that it's using the same form of ratcheting system. It's just the technology that is slightly different. But again, I have to emphasize, it's a great improvement that they didn't have to deviate when we look at the size of the clasp relative to the system inside it. instead of the Submariner glide lock, which is like 2 inches long. This of course won't necessarily be made to wear over wetsuits, but as a casual everyday wearing piece. It's a very useful system that looks like it's been implemented extremely well. And then we return back to the use of material. I believe that this was debuted on a bronze watch because bronze is easier to machine next to steel. So as far as manufacturing processes go, this is a much easier way for them to get the idea out there at first. This could have been their method to experiment with the material and the tooling that goes into this process. It's exciting seeing where this clasp is going to go, especially if it is implemented into all of their watches, from chronographs to daily sports watches to dive watches. There is so much opportunity, and I think it will be received very well. Of course, at this stage, they have arrived very late to the party, but still, it's done, and it looks like the system has been implemented well. Let's for a moment address the downsides of material, especially when we look at how these watches are presented now in the beautiful polished finish, almost gold on the surface. I'm actually surprised that these companies don't show a before and after shot of these watches, because bronze tends to age very quickly. Within 7 to 10 days, you will notice a change to the luster. Of course, this is all dependent on how you wear the watch, what situations you will be in. If you plan on taking this into the ocean, this will change how the material ages. I can see the argument for what it is. The wabi-sabi, the patina on the surface of the watch. The alloy they are using is a combination of bronze and aluminium. The end result will be, regardless, that the watch will go an almost brown-grey color with a hint of green. Speaking from a pedantic purist point of view, next to stainless steel, which is so efficient, this is a compromised material. You get an interesting look, but the watch is not going to age anywhere near as gracefully. So keep that in mind, especially if you're getting a watch like this on a full metal bracelet. Let's refer to the references that this pulls its inspiration from, and where this material could go if they started incorporating precious metals instead. I have this belief, and it's pretty obvious, that Tudor is holding back many of these ideas. It is so simple to create a Black Bay 58 GMT, and it's going to be happening soon. They are deliberately delaying these releases just so the interest keeps on coming back. Very soon, I believe, they will debut the 58 GMT with a gold finish, possibly even as a root beer. You will be seeing a very rough render in the background. There's just so much opportunity to capitalize on this. As far as the modifications go, when we look at the 58 line, do you think that they will very soon adopt Arabic dials on the pieces? And what will that entail? This is my subjective opinion, but seeing the rounded Arabics on a very organic, soft dial, the snowflake hand is too aggressive. It's purely too aggressive for what it is. Visually, it looks much better on a dial with batons instead of Arabics. Compare this to the standard divers and you can see the difference. As we now know, the snowflake hand is a staple of Tudor's aesthetic. It's a part of its diet. It's not going anywhere. To work around this, what they could do instead is maybe just incorporate another pencil-styled hand for this dial arrangement. Again, playing on those older aesthetics that we saw in the early generations of the Submariner. It's a very exciting prospect to think that the 58 will receive these kinds of aesthetics. Now we can see very clearly that it's going to be receiving a Metas movement. It's going to be getting a T-fit clasp. It might have a completely new dial arrangement. Hopefully a new set of hands, which in turn will keep driving and returning the interest back to these models. So like I said in the beginning of this video, I'm not so much interested in this watch, but the potential that it holds, especially that we're now seeing the use of the 58 size with some different aesthetics for once. And here's hoping that the brand keeps on experimenting. The 58 is their darling. It's their flagship. And into the future, I believe so, they will start using these blueprints their own way, diverting away from the ubiquitous nature that we see so often adopted by the dive watch, and create pieces that will be more daring.